Honorable educationists, today Miss Ava Ranjan will talk about NEP recommendations for equitable and inclusive education, learning for all.
Thank you Ranjan sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity to explain about equitable and inclusive education, learning for all. Education is the single greatest tool for achieving social justice and equality. Inclusive and equitable education, while indeed an essential goal in its own right, is also critical to achieving an inclusive and equitable society in which every citizen has the opportunity to dream, thrive, and contribute to the nation. The education system must aim to benefit India's children so that no child loses any opportunity to learn and excel because of circumstances of birth or background. This policy reaffirms that bridging the social category gaps in access, participation, and learning outcomes in school education will continue to be one of the major goals of all education sector development programs. This chapter may be read in conjunction with Chapter 14, which discusses analogous issues of equity and inclusion in higher education. While the Indian education system and successive government policies have made steady progress towards bridging gender and social category gaps in all levels of school education, large disparities still remain, especially at the secondary level, particularly for socioeconomically disadvantaged groups that have been historically underrepresented in education. Socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, SEDs, can be broadly categorized based on gender identities, particularly female and transgender individuals, sociocultural identities such as scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, AUCs, and minorities, geographical identities such as students from villages, small towns, and aspirational districts, disabilities including learning disabilities, and socioeconomic conditions such as migrant communities, low-income households, children in vulnerable situations, victims of or children of victims of trafficking, orphans including child beggars in urban areas, and the urban poor. While overall enrollments in schools decline steadily from grade 1 to grade 12, this decline in enrollments is significantly more pronounced for many of these SEDs, with even greater declines for female students within each of these SEDs, and often even steeper in higher education. A brief status overview of the SEDs that come within socio-cultural identities is given in following subsections.
UDICE 2016-17 data.
According to UDICE 2016-17 data, about 19.6% of students belong to scheduled castes at the primary level, but this fraction falls to 17.3% at the higher secondary level. These enrollment drop-offs are more severe for scheduled tribes students, 10.6% to 6.8%, and differently abled children, 1.1% to 0.25%, with even greater declines for female students within each of these categories. The decline in enrollment in higher education is even steeper. A multiplicity of factors, including lack of access to quality schools, poverty, social mores and customs, and language have had a detrimental effect on rates of enrollment and retention among the scheduled castes. Bridging these gaps in access, participation, and learning outcomes of children belonging to scheduled castes will continue to be one of the major goals. Also, the other backward classes, AUCs, which have been identified on the basis of historically being socially and educationally backward, also need special focus. Tribal communities and children from scheduled tribes also face disadvantages at multiple levels due to various historical and geographical factors. Children from tribal communities often find their school education irrelevant and foreign to their lives, both culturally and academically. While several programmatic interventions to uplift children from tribal communities are currently in place, and will continue to be pursued, special mechanisms need to be made to ensure that children belonging to tribal communities receive the benefits of these interventions. Minorities are also relatively underrepresented in school and higher education. The policy acknowledges the importance of interventions to promote education of children belonging to all minority communities, and particularly those communities that are educationally underrepresented.
Children with special needs, CWSN or DVYANG.
The policy also recognizes the importance of creating enabling mechanisms for providing children with special needs, CWSN or DVYANG, the same opportunities of obtaining quality education as any other child. Separate strategies will be formulated for focused attention on reducing the social category gaps in school education as outlined in the following subsections. The critical problems and recommendations regarding EQI, foundational literacy and numeracy, access, enrollment and attendance discussed in Chapters 1-3, are particularly relevant and important for underrepresented and disadvantaged groups. Therefore, the measures from Chapters 1-3 will be targeted in a concerted way for SEDS. In addition, there have been various successful policies and schemes such as targeted scholarships, conditional cash transfers to incentivize parents to send their children to school, providing bicycles for transport, etc., that have significantly increased participation of SEDS in the schooling system in certain areas. These successful policies and schemes must be significantly strengthened across the country. It will also be essential to take into account research that ascertains which measures are particularly effective for certain SEDS. For example, providing bicycles and organizing cycling and walking groups to provide access to school have been shown to be particularly powerful methods in increasing participation of female students, even at lesser distances, because of the safety benefits and comfort to parents that they provide. One-on-one teachers and tutors, peer tutoring, open schooling, appropriate infrastructure, and suitable technological interventions to ensure access can be particularly effective for certain children with disabilities. Schools providing quality ECI reap the greatest dividends for children who come from families that are economically disadvantaged. Meanwhile, counselors and/or well-trained social workers that work with and connect with students, parents, schools, and teachers in order to improve attendance and learning outcomes have been found to be especially effective for children in urban poor areas. Reaffirms, sir. Today I have discussed mainly points number 6. 1 to 6.5 of Equitable and Inclusive Education, Learning for All, NEP, 2020. We will discuss points number 6. 6 to 6.11 of Equitable and Inclusive Education, Learning for All, NEP, 2020.
Resource NEP 2020, presented by Reaffirms, Principal, Teacher Trainer and CBSE Resource Person. For more information visit MHRD websites or visit www.reaffirms.com for more presentations, videos and articles.